All right, everybody, good afternoon. Hopefully, you watched the earlier video where I went into the numbers of Jaxon Smith-Njigba. And now that we've established what he did, now it's time to establish what he's going to do now that he's in the NFL. What is going to translate? What is going to work well? What is he going to bring to the table that made him worthy of going 20th overall? Here's how I see it. And I watched a couple games of his. I looked at a lot of tape. I looked at a lot of highlight reels. I looked at a lot of even some of the bad plays as well, trying to figure out what makes this guy so coveted. Because understand, this guy is widely considered by most everyone to be a slot only receiver. And yet there were many big boards, many pundits, many professionals who had this guy in their top 10. Now, I didn't, but many of them did. Now, understand that as a slot receiver, you lose value, theoretically. So, you can understand that a guy like a Calvin Johnson going number 2 overall, yeah, that makes sense because he's on the outside. He's playing pretty much every snap. He can always be on the field. Versus a guy like a JSN who needs to be put on the move, who needs to be allowed free releases, who isn't going to be on the field every snap compared to a guy like a Calvin Johnson. That costs you value. And yet this guy was still considered by some to be a top 10 prospect, and virtually everyone considered him top 20. So I really wanted to pull open this onion to figure out what made him that valuable. So the thing that really stands out is the route running. He is a phenomenal route runner, and he's got great quickness. And that change of direction that I talked about this morning that he showed in his 3-cone and his 20-yard shuttle, which allows him to get open quickly, that's where he makes his bread. He can get open really quickly. He runs many different routes and he runs them well. And he parlays all that into a package that is really hard to defend, especially with his zone coverage. He's not that fast, and we'll talk about that a little bit later, but he's quick, and he's a really good route runner. So he overcomes that with ease, the greatest of ease. There are many snaps where you would never even know that he's like a 4-5 guy. He's got a really good release package when coming off the line of scrimmage, although I will say I don't know how well that translates to the NFL because his arms are so short, and ideally he won't even need to use it because he'll be playing almost primarily, actually I should say almost entirely from the slot. But look, there will come a day when maybe we need JSN to play outside and we can have this conversation. I'll put it to you that way. He's really good at deceiving defenders with footwork to gain leverage on them, by which I mean he sets up the defender looking like he's going to go a certain way and then he breaks another way. He's really good at disguising what the route is going to be until the last possible second, and that allows him to get an advantage over his defender that is not just born of, oh, I'm faster than you and I can outrun you. He does have really quick acceleration. He gets up to his top speed very, very fast. Part of that is because his top speed is not that high, but his acceleration is great. And the best use case for JSN is getting open against zone defense. When he sees a zone defense out there, he has an innate ability to find the hole in the coverage, get to the hole, sit down, and wait for the ball. He has the ability to know where he needs to be in order to present himself to the quarterback. And he's really, really good at that kind of stuff. He's really good at getting right behind the linebackers in a place where the quarterback can get him the ball and he can kind of just occupy that space between the linebacker and the safety. He is awesome against zone defense, and that is something that makes him really valuable on third down, because a lot of third down in the NFL is getting open against his own defense. Broken plays, he's really good on broken plays as well. When the play breaks down and the QB's running around trying to make something happen, he's really good at keeping the play alive and at least trying to get involved. Like Doug Baldwin and to an extent I would say Tyler Lockett are good at that. JSN has proven to be pretty good at that as well. He's got great hands. He's a natural hands catcher. He always catches with his hands. He has 6 drops on 133 career college targets, which at the NFL, if he maintains that approximate ability, that approximate catch percentage or drop percentage in the NFL, I can live with that, no problem. Um, that would be basically a little bit better than Metcalf. That would be pretty close to what Lockett traditionally gives you in terms of hands. So he's got really good hands. He doesn't have tremendous. It's not like he's going to run people over. It's not like he's going to break tackles, but he can make defenders miss because he's got good change of direction skills and he sees the field really well. He's got almost like running back type vision, which allows him to rack up a lot of yards after the catch. So he is a yard after the catch threat, even though he's not DK Metcalf out there. He's not running people over, but he is setting things up well with his intelligence and vision, and he's changing direction very quickly. Even though he only really played 1 year in college football, one full year, and doesn't have huge career numbers, he's pretty pro ready, and I think he's basically ready to produce at a high level from day one. He's proven himself capable of making plays in the short area of the field, intermediate, and deep. You can send him deep. I saw him get sent on skinny posts a couple times. Sometimes he just runs up the seam, and he's able to make deep catches down the field for big plays. He's great at short stuff. He even makes some catches out of the backfield, particularly in that Rose Bowl that really put him on the map as a player. And the intermediate stuff, of course. So he's making plays all over the field. I was really impressed with what he did in contested catch situations. He's got short arms, I know that. You would think he would struggle in these situations, but he's got great body control and he's got a great understanding of how to get his feet down. And obviously in the NFL that's going to be harder because you have to get 2 feet down versus one in college, but he's really good in those situations where he's tightly covered and needs to make a contested catch. That's one thing that stands out when you watch him. Even though he doesn't have great deep ball speed, and I don't think he's going to be a great deep ball receiver, like in the way that we saw Lockett be a great deep ball receiver, he's very good at finding the ball and tracking the ball in the air when it's thrown deep in his direction. So he will be able to do some things in that area. It's not going to be. He's not going to be a deep ball wizard or anything, but he'll be better at it than his speed would indicate. And this is one thing I'm going to talk about when I go into some of the film that I looked at with him. When he was asked to block, I thought he was okay. Not anything great, not anything special, but I thought he was okay. He's a willing blocker at the least. I didn't think he embarrassed himself on the reps that I saw, for whatever that's worth. Now, we got to talk about some of the issues with him as a player, and there are some. And they do leave me wondering how to feel about this pick overall, admittedly, even though I think I know where I land ultimately on this one. The main drawback with JSN as a player is his speed. He does not have high-end top speed. He's like a 4.5 guy, and I think he ran like a 4.48 on the OSU track, which you put him on a football field, it's going to be more like a 4.55 at best. And when opposing defenses leave him in man coverage, he has a little bit of a problem. Sometimes man coverage can just swallow him up because that's all about being able to beat your man sometimes. And while he is occasionally able to beat man coverage, sometimes he just gets swallowed up. He has a hard time getting open if he can't win on deception with his routes. I don't think he'll be much in the outside receiver area. I think he's more of a slot receiver. I don't know what he'll be able to do against press coverage in the NFL, although that only really matters if he starts playing outside. He only has the 1 season of production in college due to injuries, and injuries are going to be a concern with him. I don't want to overlook that. And outside of his great change of direction skills, not a great athlete. All right, so that's basically the comprehensive list of pros and cons, and here's the question I really have. Because I'm not saying I dislike this pick, but I want to ask people this, the people who like this pick more than I do, and there are many. There are quite a few people who don't like this pick at all, though. I certainly like it more than them, but to the people who really like this pick, I'm thinking about JSN, and I'm comparing him to the other slot receivers that were in this draft class, and there were a lot. Marvin Mims, to a certain extent, Rashee Rice, Parker Washington, Xavier Hutchinson, what was his name? Nathaniel Dell, bunch of other guys, too. There were a lot of potential slot receivers in this class. Yes, JSN is better than all of them, but by how much is he better than all of them? That's what I'm trying to understand here. I can accept that he's a little bit better, but is he a lot better? because you could have gotten some of those guys in the third round or the fourth round. And if they're only a little bit worse, I feel like you'd probably rather spend the third or fourth round pick on one of them than somebody slightly better at 20. All right, let's go ahead and start unpacking this. And I watched 2 games with JSN, mostly because he's a pretty easy player to understand once you start watching him. And you're not going to find a lot of bad reps with him because theoretically his bad reps would come when he's lined up outside, which OSU did very rarely. And, he's got a few drops in his ledger, right? Like he dropped 6 passes in 2021, which, whatever. I don't really think that's that big of a deal. But you can look at those drops and go like, oh, he should have caught that ball, but he didn't. But there isn't a hell of a lot to massage there. He's a phenomenal slot receiver, really good at running routes and getting open. And you can understand that just watching a handful of games. So I just watched these 2. Watched his game against Oregon, where he had a buck 45, 2 touchdowns on 7 catches, 11 targets. One thing I noticed is he was used as the lead blocking receiver on bubble screens to Olave twice. And I would have assumed it would have gone the other way. Olave's lead blocking and JSN is catching. But no, JSN was blocking for Olave. So I'm not saying he had great reps, but they were fine. And the fact that they trusted him in that role was meaningful to me. He did have a drop on a high but catchable pass early in the game on a third down after not getting called for an OPI. By the way, I did notice a couple of those push-off OPIs on him that sometimes they were called, sometimes they weren't. But the really notable thing is that he got a lot of defensive attention in coverage. Olave's out there, Garrett Wilson's out there, and it doesn't matter. They're still sending a ton of defensive attention at him in this game. There was a great hesitation route he ran on an inside slant, and then he had a long run after the catch. And that's just indicative of what he can do to use little trickery to get open. I'm not going to be able to outrun you, but I'll be able to get open really quickly by tricking you into thinking I'm going this way and then I go that way, or not giving away my plan until the last possible second. He had a tight window catch against zone on third down to keep a drive alive, survives a big hit, keeps his possession of the ball. I noticed a lot of plays where he does get open underneath and doesn't get targeted because C.J. Stroud's trying to push the ball downfield to Olave and Garrett Wilson. So if Stroud decided to get tunnel vision on somebody like a JSN, his numbers in 2021 could have been even crazier than they were. And as the year went on, it felt like he kind of started doing that. He had a 26-yard touchdown on a seam route. The cornerback was just kind of flat-footed at the line of scrimmage. JSN just went past him. The cornerback did not look prepared at all. That was kind of indicative of the stuff he can do. As this game went on, I noticed more and more plays where he was lead blocking for bubble screens, which surprised me. There are definitely reps, like I said, where man coverage swallows him up because he doesn't have the speed to beat it. Later in the game, I noticed a really nice contested catch over the middle, great body control. I think he had to kind of reach back to go get it, did it with no problem. He got wide open on a crossing route for a second touchdown, just an easy pitch and catch from Stroud. He gets wide open on a 22-yarder near the boundaries against zone defense, just gets wide open, keeps the play alive. C.J. Stroud, I think, started to scramble because the play had been going on for so long. A lot of the missed targets, Stroud just whiffed. There were 4 targets that were incomplete to JSN in this game, and Stroud was just inaccurate on them. And there was one play where the ball just kind of floated out of Stroud's hands. I think he got hit as the ball got thrown. And JSN made a great catch on that ball to keep the game alive. Very impressive stuff there. And the other game I watched was the Utah game, and this was the monster game. 15 catches, 16 targets, 336 yards, and 3 touchdowns. The main things, because obviously he played amazing in this game, but the things I really want to highlight from this game, he caught 3 passes on plays where he lined up in the backfield, which is not something he did very much during the season. He ran a Texas route on one of those plays. The other 2 were just simple dump-offs, but he did run a Texas route, and it makes me wonder, could he do that more in the NFL? I also saw him run the old Baldwin skinny post against a man for a long touchdown. He had a crossing route behind zone defense for another long touchdown. He did have a fumble on what was almost a 4th touchdown. Pre-snap motion, just a simple streak route. Really elusive. He caught many passes late when the team was trying to go win the game because it got crazy at the end there. Just got better and better as the game went on, it almost felt like, even though he caught many big plays early on. So, look, I mean, you catch 336 yards worth of passes. You played an incredible game, and I don't really need to go super deep into it to tell you why. But the usage of JSN in this game, getting snaps out of the backfield, catching passes as a running back, that's interesting. Doing the Baldwin skinny post, that's interesting. Because if you can bring that stuff to the NFL, that adds a whole new dimension to things. All right, so that's what I got to say about JSN. Tomorrow we'll be moving on to Derek Hall. Hope to see you guys then. Go Hawks. Let me know what you think down below.